He is now saying we're not going to go to worldviewreport.com. He's saying we're not going to buy Gaza because there's nothing left to buy. We're just going to take it. It just gets funnier and funnier.
Yeah, I mean,
but
who would buy what's left? A bunch.
Yeah,
of
exactly. Can you imagine all the cost of cleaning it up, and you don't know all the cost of getting out the buried explosives, right? I mean, there's a lot of hazardous stuff there.
I would think it would take years. Yeah.
Yeah, and it'd be like buying a condemned property where the toilets haven't been working. And actually, I know of a property, believe it or not, here in the Mid-South, where it's in a very nice neighborhood. The homes are $700,000-800,000, which here in the Mid-South buys a lot of house. Okay, we're not talking New York, California, Minnesota prices. Right. $700,000-800,000 here buys a lot of house in the Mid-South. And this house, it was condemned after the parents willed it to their two sons. The one son, I think, committed suicide, and the other one was left and had to be checked into a mental facility, from everything I've been told by a neighbor that lives next door to it. And it's been a blight for this neighborhood of nice homes, but the utilities quit working. So there was no sanitation in the home. So you can imagine what was going on, right? Because they couldn't use the toilets. And the home has just completely dilapidated, and nobody seems to want it. The bank can't get rid of it because of the hazmat suits you're going to have to wear to go in and clean this house up, and then maybe at this point actually just demolish it, bring it down, scrape the lot, and rebuild. And the cost of that is so high. This is the analogy I'm making, folks, for Gaza. The cost is so high that entrepreneurs in the area look at it and say, I don't know that you could return a profit on this. And I kind of take that and say, well, add it to Gaza. If that's just one lot that I'm aware of in the Mid-South with that going on, can you imagine going into an area that's been occupied by terrorists and trying to figure out how you're going to clean it up, get rid of any contaminants, and then you add in explosives and maybe even biological weapons in there?
An incredibly risky venture for anyone to try to endeavor to fix, Brandon. I would much rather see President Trump focus on some of the small cities and towns across the Southeast, Mid-South, and Midwest that have been decimated by years of unfair trade policies by the globalists that have literally hollowed out these towns. You see vacant factories with caved-in roofs and shuttered doors all over the Southeast where I live, and I've seen it, in the Mid-South and the Midwest as well. Textile factories, machine shops, all of that stuff that was outsourced to China, Mexico, and other countries is now sitting there dormant and falling in, looking not too dissimilar to what we see in Gaza. So I would really like to see him focus on repairing what's the damage done here at home before he ventures to solve the problems in Gaza. But perhaps he can get some private investors to do that. I hope it's not going to be done at taxpayers' expense.
That I would have to 100% agree with. Yeah. So let's talk about what is the big story. Aaron will join us tomorrow. Shahram will join me tonight on this for TV. But President Trump made a big announcement yesterday. He says they have until noon. Hamas has until noon on Saturday to return not a few, but all the hostages. All the hostages. And apparently the prime minister, I've got it on my website at worldviewreport.com, Netanyahu says there will be war if the hostages are not returned. And apparently the prime minister is 100% agreeing. We hear that they're already moving troops to the border. This may end up being the war that we were all waiting for in a bigger, larger way. Of course, the concern also is that maybe these hostages that are still being held are either many of them deceased or they are within hours or days of dying, because of some of the reports that hostages are coming out and saying, these are the conditions we're under. You could see it in their physical appearance. And so maybe the thought is at this point, if they don't release all of them, then we go to war, because these people will be dead in the next few days anyway, because they've reached the tipping point for survival just because of the way they're being treated and lack of nutrition.
Yeah, it seems like the pattern I've seen. I'm not the the authority on this by any stretch, so you can add to it or debunk it if it sounds like it's not right. But from giving it the eye test, Brandon, it seems like the women who've been released look much better, in much better shape, and the men look like Holocaust survivors. All I can guess from this is that they fed the women better. Why? Because they wanted to, use them for their own gratification.
Yep.
Whereas the men were ignored and left to starve. Is that kind of what you're seeing, or am I off?
Yeah, no, it is 100%. And we showed pictures yesterday of this, their appearances. But and not only do I think they want to keep the women in good shape, so as you say, they can have their way with them, but I think some of them were also being used as personal maids, cooks, and nannies. They've come out and said that. So I don't know that they had any use for wanting the men around, but they wanted the women to serve as cooks, cleaners, and nannies for their children.
And sex slaves, yeah.
Yeah. Let's go to another issue, and that is Representative Eli Crane drafts articles of impeachment against Obama appointee Judge Paul Engelmayer. And this is something that people ought to maybe be calling their U.S. senator. It's interesting this happened because last night on the broadcast, I was saying with our D.C. correspondent, Neil McCabe, that we need to have a big impeachment. We need to get rid of all these federal judges that are trying to tell the president what he can and cannot do with the executive branch. And they really don't have the authority to tell him. It's like I don't know, it was Pete Hegseth or someone tweeted out, a federal judge can't tell a general how to prosecute a war. He
could not agree more. Yeah, could not agree more. I think your guest, Dan Eastman, also spoke to that issue last night, saying that, it's not within the authority constitutionally of the judicial branch to second guess everything the executive does in administering the law. The executive branch is to administer and execute the laws set down by Congress. And there is wide latitude historically given to the executive to do that. We didn't see this happening during the Biden administration, but now suddenly that we've got a conservative president in office, everything he does is being not only taken to court, but it seems like at least half of his executive orders so far, Brandon, are being stalled with temporary injunctions. And when they grant a temporary injunction, that's usually a pretty good clue how they're going to rule in the final analysis in these district courts where the cases are brought. And it takes months, sometimes years, for a case to go all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court could even reject the case outright and just decide not to rule on it. And then you've got these lower courts basically dictating what the president of the United States can do. It's completely unconstitutional.
100%. And so let me give you a phone number, folks. This is the phone number for Representative Eli Crane. His last name is C-R-A-N-E, Eli, E-L-I. Representative Eli Crane. He's the one that is offering up this piece of legislation. Maybe you want to call him and just say thank you to his office. Maybe you just want to call and say, thank you, Mr. Crane, for taking some leadership on these judges that are outside of their constitutional authority, and we need to rein in the judiciary. And I want to say thank you, Mr. Crane. If you want to do that, encourage this man. You could do that. His number is 202-225-3361. Again, area code 202-225-3361. I think he's a U.S. representative out of Arizona. And we've reached out to his office today, and they were very, very helpful. And we're working to schedule an interview with the congressman on this. But I would also say, folks, you might want to contact your own U.S. representative and then your U.S. senators, because if they get impeached, there'll have to be a trial over in the Senate, if I understand how the process works. So you might want to let your elected officials, both in the House, your one House member, and your two U.S. senators know that you believe these judges do need to be reined in, that they're outside their constitutional authority to try to be telling President Trump what he can and cannot do with his executive branch. Any more than President Trump could put a executive order and stop a judge's ruling. I mean, think about that.
Right.
I mean, President Trump signs an executive order saying to the Supreme Court, you can't do this, or the Ninth Circuit, you can't do this. They would scream and holler. Well, they have no authority to tell him how he can and cannot run the executive branch when it comes to if there was some blatant issue, then there's a process for this. Congress can get involved that funds the executive branch. But for the judge to be making purely political, partisan decisions, they've crossed the line. They need to be impeached. So you might let your U.S. congressmen know, folks, your 2 U.S. senators. And then again, if you want to thank Congressman Eli Crane for his leadership on this, as he's introduced a piece of legislation to impeach this first judge. The number again is 202-225-3361. And thank you, Jill, our editor, for being on this story today. I guess one of Jill's friends called and said back, I just called and his staffer answered on the second ring.
Wow.
I told him, yes, great job. We support the impeachment of these corrupt judges. And the staffer said, we're getting so many positive phone calls. Thank you for the support. So maybe
people did not elect these judges to change America. They elected Donald Trump. Plain and simple, it was a rout of an election. He won the Electoral College. He swept that. He took the majority vote by a handleable margin, and now he's being undermined by unelected people in black robes. So this needs to be stopped. You're exactly right, Brandon, and we've got it right there in front of us on how it's going to be done. Mm-hmm. Threaten the use of impeachment. If they don't back down, then go through with it. It needs to be done.
Well, I think they need to go ahead and impeach one or two. They need to impeach one or two.
Yes.
So
make an example.
Yep. They need to be, just how they always prosecute some guy to the full extent of the law to make an example. And they'll even admit, we're making an example of him. All right, fine. Well, it's time to make an example of the judges, right? Who judges the judge? Who judges the judges? And that would be Congress.
Absolutely. Popular vote. Senior moment there. I couldn't think of the word popular. He won the popular vote and the Electoral College. He's the president.
When we come back, let's talk about how the United States of America created these terrorist organizations. We've been fighting terrorism for decades now. As far back as my childhood, the 70s, right? And planes being hijacked, and what went on with the Olympics with the Israeli Olympians. But sadly, America has funded and built most of these terrorist organizations, and now we have more proof. Don't go away. Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview. All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com. worldviewradio.com. Be sure to stay tuned for Crosstalk with Jim Schneider, top of the hour, of vcy.org, vcy.org, America's original Christian talk program since the 1970s on over 100 outlets nationwide. We are continuing to go through DVDs, or not DVDs, VHS tapes, DAT tapes, mini disc tapes. And we just found something again I have not seen since 1998. I'd forgotten all about it. Apparently, Dr. D. James Kennedy's crew with Truths That Transform sent a film crew to my home in 1998 to interview me about the state of education in America. I had completely forgotten all about it. In fact, the tape that I had that came from Truths That Transform, I thought was something different. I thought it was my singing the Lord's Prayer in the morning church service at Coral Ridge Presbyterian with their big, gigantic pipe organ. I thought that's what that was. And so I said, hey, Logan, I'd like to see this one. He pops it in the VHS player to start copying it onto this device where we can then load it as a digital file. And it's not that at all. It's me being interviewed for a TV special that was produced by Truths That Transform with Dr. Kennedy. I'm telling you, folks, there's so much we have done over the years, so many wonderful experiences, I can't even remember them. If I had to give some advice to young people today, starting out, one of them would be to keep a diary, keep a journal. Keep a journal. If I had to do it all over again, I would have kept a daily journal of my experiences in life, what I did that day, who I talked with, everything. And I would have taken more pictures, which of course is so easy for young people today because they have cameras on their phones now and video cameras. We didn't have all that. And I'm not talking about taking a picture of what you had for dinner and putting it on social media. Take more video and pictures of your children. Take more video pictures of your grandkids. So that's one thing I'm going to do for sure. But man, if I had to do it over again, I would take more pictures, more video of my kids and life and growing up, because it's so fun now to go back and look. My wife and I are thoroughly enjoying watching our just simple things that we were doing in our home with our kids and trips we were taking and traveling in the motor coach. It's very rewarding as a parent to look back and watch that. And you know what else? One of the things, my kids don't realize how much we did with them because some of them were so young at the time. And as they watch it, they're appreciating their mom and dad more, because not that they didn't, but they're like, wow, you guys did a lot with us. You guys spent a lot of time with us. Well, they don't remember that. I can't remember what interviews I gave when I was an adult. How could a little kid remember all we were doing with them and for them? And so young people, take more pictures of your family, take more video, and I would urge you, take a journal. Write down a journal. You may not think it's important now, but when you get to be 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, and you go back through it, you will remember what a rich life you lived. And many of those things will be small experiences that at the time didn't really mean that much to you. But when you go back and read it, you're like, that was a really special dinner. That was a special vacation. That was a special, visit in my home I had with whoever came through town. You'll remember things, and you'll remember them with a fondness and a reflection of gratitude, but only if you can remember them. So I wish I had journaled. I wish I had written down what I was doing along the way, just for myself, but also to share with my kids, and also to remember those things. So Logan pulled that off there today, a 1998 interview in my home with Dr. Kennedy's film crew. Then they came back to my home again in 2009, and we're trying to get our hands on that one, to interview me about Saul Alinsky. So that sparked my memory. I'd forgotten about that one. That was just 2009. But seeing the 1998 one sparked my memory. Oh, wait a minute. I think I've done this before with them. So that'll be loaded to the vault today. At worldviewtube.com/vault. And Logan's also loading that 1993, my first television production I ever did on the state of education, cradle to college, based on my book. That's an hour and 17 minutes. We played 8 minutes of it on TV last night if you want to go watch any of it at worldviewtube.com. And we'll put all of that in the vault. But we're trying to track down all of these historic videos. They're historic to us, maybe not to you guys, but the history of what we've done here and what we're doing, and trying to preserve our story and our history as an organization. But man, I'd completely forgotten about Dr. Kennedy's film crew from 1998 and the things that we were fighting then and standing up for then. And they're more intense even now. So that's my advice to the young crowd, the young people. Keep a journal for sure. Keep a journal. What about you, Leo? What do you make of what I just said? You and I are about the same age, kids, grandkids. What do you make of what I just said?
It's very true. You do forget a lot of what you did. I mean, we homeschooled our kids, took them, all over the country on field trips, took them to, Civil War battlefields and museums, and it's easy to forget some of it. So in a way, we did keep a journal because at the time when our kids were in those formative years, we owned a weekly newspaper, and my wife wrote a weekly column, which was pretty much all of what was going on in the home and household with the kids.
Wow.
And so we could pull out those old back issues of those newspapers, turn to the editorial page, and there's a column called Meandering with Marty. My wife's name is Marty. And, and you could remember what you did that week. But I do wish we had more video. I mean, back then we didn't have the convenience of phones. I did take a lot of pictures being a photographer myself. But even a lot of those, towards the early 2000s, we already were going digital, and you didn't print out all those. So I actually have tons of pictures sitting on old hard drives of dusty old computers, sitting up in the attic space. So, it's good advice, Brandon, because we do forget about those years, those wonderful years.
Absolutely, you do. Let's see here. Let's go to, we do have a little breaking news here. At Real Anna Paulina, she's a congresswoman. She announces a new congressional committee that will declassify government secrets. JFK, RFK, MLK assassinations, Epstein files, UFOs, 9/11, COVID. And she's going to be chairwoman. Now, the executive order by President Trump releasing the JFK, RFK, MLK assassination files should be coming any day now, because there's a time it had to be released within so many days. But did you hear yesterday? The FBI, magically, Leo, the FBI has now discovered 2,400 previously unknown files on JFK assassination. Did you hear that?
No, I did not. Unbelievable.
2,400 pages.
Wow.
There you go.
And they'll probably be heavily redacted.
Well, let's pray that President Trump does something about that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what else we got real quick before we keep moving on to what we said we were going to talk about. I guess that's probably it for about right now. Oh, Trump says U.S. Disaster Relief Agency should be terminated, FEMA. Now, you watch again, the courts get in the way of that one, because there's a lot of money laundering, I think, that goes on with FEMA, as well as was USAID, which is a good transition. We're now finding out billions of dollars have gone through USAID to fund terrorist groups and the murder of Americans. In fact, I have on my website somewhere today that, yes, USAID sent $9.3 billion to the Islamic State, to Islamic terrorists, I should say, terror states, which killed U.S. soldiers. USAID sent $9.3 billion to Islamic terror states that killed 3,000 American soldiers, and over $18 billion to Islamic terrorist states. Okay, so we got terror states and Islamic terrorists. I don't know what the difference. USA sent 9.3.
I couldn't figure out the difference in that headline either. But
I can't either. But
the bottom line is
$18 billion
to Islamic terrorists to kill not only people in the Middle East that don't want to fall in line with their Sharia policies, but also brutalizing, wounding, and killing American soldiers to the tune of 3,000 over the last, I don't know how many years that was, Brandon. But certainly it would include Afghanistan, it would include Iraq, or maybe the numbers would be even higher if we included those wars, Brandon.
Now, if you have organized crime that is involved in funding the murder of someone in the United States, that person is prosecuted, and the people up the line are all prosecuted with racketeering laws, right? Even if you didn't know, you should have known, and therefore you get scooped up and you get prosecuted. And I think it was Mayor Rudy Giuliani as a fellow prosecutor, that kind of perfected that, right? I believe we need to be calling for an audit of USAID, who authorized those funds tied to those 3,000 deaths, and those people need to be prosecuted, and they need to start making restitution. Again, we don't need to imprison people that have themselves not been involved in violent crimes, carrying out the physical, violence himself, but maybe this would be an exception because they are funding it. So
Yeah,
these people either need to be either put in prison as accessories to murder, or prosecuted, and then they need to go to work. And they need to make restitution to the families. We can track it right back to these 3,000 families, and their next of kin needs to start receiving. I don't care if they're working at McDonald's flipping burgers. They're going to start paying a percentage of their wages are going to be garnished, and they're going to start paying restitution to these families. If we do not put the terror of the government in the wicked, then the wicked will come back and put the terror in the good. And that's exactly what's been going on in this country for decades.
Yes, 100% agree. The people are afraid of their government, the good people of America. It should be the other way around. You're right. The government should be afraid of the people. But if you knowingly diverted funds appropriated to your agency, your government agency by Congress, if you took those funds and knowingly diverted them to a murderous terrorist organization, I do think you should be prosecuted. And I do think you should serve some time. But like any other two-bit murderer, Brannon, I think they have blood on their hands. There's just no other way around it. And anyone in Congress who is involved in this scam should be penalized as well. I don't know about serving time, but they should be. They should have money coming out of their coffers to make restitution as well, because it is Congress's duty to provide oversight to these federal agencies. So where was Congress when all this was going on? When the $9.3 billion was being diverted to ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and other murderous terrorist Islamic organizations, where was Congress? They were silent. They were absent. They had to have known it was going on because they're briefed on in these back rooms by the State Department, by the CIA. They have security clearances. They go into these skiffs and read these top secret documents. It's all a scam, and it frankly should infuriate the American public.
So when we come back, we're going to delve more into this. We, as a nation, and sadly as taxpayers, we have funded terrorist groups. We've built them. The CIA helped to build ISIS, Al-Qaeda. We built up Saddam Hussein. We built up bin Laden. We built up all these groups. And I want you to talk about that when we come back, because now we're fighting, again, groups that are threatening us here in the U.S. Hamas is now threatening Americans. If Donald Trump follows through on what he's saying about the Gaza, they're threatening Americans now. But who created those groups and let them into the country to be here to start with? Don't go away. Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHousebg.com. All right, we've got a little breaking news. Every time we go to a break, we come back with breaking news. Jerome Powell is testifying before a congressional committee, and apparently he has just said that the Federal Reserve will not create a central bank digital currency. Well, hello. Donald Trump signed an executive order saying you can't do that, so good thing you're going to obey for a change, Jerome. But he's saying we will never do that. Well, why have they all of a sudden changed their mind? I want to loop into this, a little rabbit trail for a minute, come right back. Listen to this.
Something that concerns me a lot is the idea that we would even look like China in any way. So can I have your commitment that as long as you're the chairman of the Federal Reserve System, that we will never have a central bank digital currency?
Yes.
Thank you for that. I think
there you go. Real quick before we go back to the main topic. You and I Dan Eastman, all the rest of us have been trying to figure out what is it these people are up to. They were all big on the Fed Now. They created the Fed Now wallets. The American citizens could eventually get these Fed wallets. And all of a sudden, they're changing course. They're changing direction. What are they doing, Leo?
Well, for years, they've been geared towards creating one. They've done all the studies. They've done all the technical preparations for one. All but launching it was already accomplished. I mean, so for them to go back on this now, they're either lying to pacify the current administration, saying, okay, we'll just put this on the back burner and wait till we get a new administration in 4 years. And it doesn't have to be a Democrat. I mean, come on, people, let's be realistic here. There's plenty of Republicans who have been pitching this central bank digital currency. And along paired, by the way, with a national digital ID system, which then you have your social credit scoring system in place. As long as you have those two, digital currency and digital IDs, that is the infrastructure for the new coming One World digital tracking system. And now Trump says he's not going to participate in at least half of that, that being the central bank digital currency. That does not, however, get us completely off the hook of not having to worry, even under President Trump, Brandon, because there has been talk, he has his man in place who's in charge of digital currencies and crypto. His cryptos are. And so President is very big on cryptocurrencies. He's just wanting to make sure that we don't have one that's totally controlled by the central banking system, okay? That doesn't mean it could not be controlled by the government. So I do think we need to keep our alert on high here for a future mechanism that would control a replacement for the fiat paper dollar, that being a digital programmable currency based on blockchain that is not run through the Federal Reserve Bank.
Okay, bingo. So Donald Trump, like Andrew Jackson, and I read some of the speech last night from Andrew Jackson, March 4th or something, March 4th, 1818, March 4th, 1837, the farewell address of President Andrew Jackson from my state of Tennessee here, the Hermitage, which everybody should visit if they have the chance. Says, I did away with the central bank. I got censured for it. But we should never do this again. And he talked about how our great threat is no longer from abroad. The bravery of your gallant sons is known all over the world. And our great threat is now from within. And it's from bankers and corporations. And everybody should read Andrew Jackson's farewell address. Now, there's a lot of similarities between Andrew Jackson and Donald Trump. I said that during his first term, and I'll say it again in his second term. And Andrew Jackson, they tried killing Andrew Jackson 3 or 4 times. At one point, the gun misfired like twice, and Andrew Jackson took his cane and started beating the assassin. I mean, Andrew Jackson was a character for sure. And they went after his wife so badly that she died while he was president-elect from a broken heart because she was so ridiculed and her character dragged through the mud that she died from a broken heart. Jackson believed it. And many around her believed it. So the press was just ruthless. The politicians were ruthless. They were out to destroy this man and his family. Sound familiar? And then they censured him for doing away with the central bank, but we didn't listen. We get the Federal Reserve in 1913. So it seems as though Donald Trump is on the same track. He's going to do away with a central bank digital currency, executive order. You can't do that, and go around these guys. Which, when you add that to Iran supposedly having surface-to-air missiles in the U.S., Secret Service sources have come out saying they were worried when he was president-elect about Trump Force One and such identifiable plane, which I guarantee you doesn't have the missiles system on it that Air Force One has. And they were worried about him. And they're still. This guy's going after the central bank. He's going after big pharma. He's going after big ag. He's going after FEMA where they launder money. He's going after the CIA. He's unveiling the JFK, RFK, MLK files, which is going after the CIA. He's going after their money laundering through the USAID and FEMA. This guy is touching all the bases, all the third rails. He's touching at one time. I don't know, aside from maybe Kennedy, who tried doing this, I don't know of any president that has ever touched all the third rails at one time and this many rails. Do you?
I don't, Brandon. I mean, I was born in 1962, and so I was technically alive when President Kennedy was talking about getting rid of the Federal Reserve and the CIA, which is what I believe got him killed.
Yes.
But I was clearly, barely born at that point, so I don't have any recollection. But yeah, in my lifetime, I cannot remember in my, since I've been following politics, which is since I've been like 17 or 18 years old. I was a political science major in college. I've been following it very closely ever since. I've never seen anything like this. It is just whipsaw every day, another executive order, another targeted, sacred cow that we thought we would never get rid of. President Trump says he wants to shut it down or defund it or, completely remake it. I keep waiting for the IRS. I want to see the IRS shut down. There is no need for it. We could fund the government through tariffs or other type of excise taxes, as your brilliant economist guest pointed out last night, Professor Dan Eastman. And so let's get on with it. The problem is, as we already discussed in the earlier segment of this show, the courts. The court system is hell-bent on keeping this at loggerjams, stalling, delaying. Even if they lose, if they can stall it off for 2 years, Brandon, then we get a new Congress in, then we get, the campaign starting for the next presidential election. And it's going to, that mandate every day, a little bit more of that mandate for President Trump is going to wear off. And the chances are going to lessen that he gets any of these executive orders actually implemented. And that's what worries me.
Over at leoholman.com, you have this article, leoholman.com, Trump the disruptor, moves quickly to burn down the system, but will disruption turn into chaos? Will closing the Department of Ed, USAID, and other agencies actually lead to less government intrusion in our lives? Or will they be replaced by something more sinister? What would the more sinister be?
That would be AI, artificial intelligence. And since we've got one of the princes of AI sort of in charge of the Doge, which is doing incredibly good things by blowing the whistle and making it, shedding the light on all of these waste and abusive policies of the government. Elon Musk is also one of the head honchos of the development of AI in this country. And so a lot of experts, such as Patrick Wood, are surmising that possibly it's something we need to be concerned about, that closing down these agencies, while a good thing, and laying off, tens of thousands of these useless government bureaucrats, if we get them replaced by artificial intelligence and we end up with, as Joe Allen calls it, an algocracy, then we're in trouble. What is an algocracy? Government by algorithm. That is something that not many people are thinking about and certainly not talking about right now, Brandon.
Government by algorithm. These little, I don't mean it in a condescending way, but that's just how they're being described. These little nerds, these little tech nerds of Elon going into the Treasury and different things and using AI to quickly scan the files and spit out information of who's getting what, how much. This is great. Television, people talked about, the evils of that. Or, I'm sure they talked about the evils of every technology that's ever come along. And the technology, as anything, money, can be used for good or ill. The ability, though, for the AI to be used, which is really not artificial and it's not intelligent, it's just very, very fast computers. So I want to reiterate that, folks. These are not computers they're not doing anything that we haven't been doing for years with projections and mathematical tables and trends and projections that were being done mathematically by a system where the formula was put into the computer and the computer would run it and spit it back out. It's just that now we can do these things quicker and faster and then give the data to the computer program for the parameters of what it is we want it to do. And so it's called artificial, it's called intelligent, and it's not artificial and it's not intelligent. It's just fast programmed computers doing things beyond what humans can do, which is great because, again, you could see where you could get the size of government down really, really small, find out extreme waste and what's not working, what is not within the confines of the Constitution, and eliminate it. But on the other side, as you say, think of the absolute evil it can do. So this is two sides of a coin, the good side and the bad side.
Right, because like you said, it all depends on what the input to the AI programs is. If you have people instructing the machines, the machine learning aspect of this, to apply the laws unfairly, which is what we've seen for years under previous administrations, this, even if it's used, I guess my point is, even if AI is used for good under a current administration, what's to stop it from being used for evil under a future administration? Once all the agencies are shut down, the needless ones, which is good, but then replaced with AI, I think it's going to be much simpler for a future administration to be very, very efficient in oppressing the people. And who are you going to argue with when AI is the one making the decisions? I mean, how do you even, do you sue AI? Do you take AI to court? I mean, think about it, Brandon. This is setting up a whole lot of unanswered questions for the future, even if it sounds good right now.
1-800-347-9829. Your thoughts, your comments, your questions. 1-800-347-9829. You can also email in your questions, Brannon at worldviewtube.com, BRANNON at worldviewtube.com, because I know there's some of you that don't want to call in. It makes you nervous for whatever reason. So I get that. So you can also send in your email question. I'll try to get through as many as we can today. 1-800-347-9829. By the way, folks, don't forget, we are coming to Milwaukee, the Waukesha Expo Center on Tuesday night, April 15th from 7 to 9:30. It's our Worldview Rally. It's our Worldview Radio, I should say. Worldview Radio Understanding the Times Rally. Dr. Andy Woods and myself will be speaking. We'll be there live in person. We invited Dan Eastman to come and join us and greet the attendees because he's right there nearby. He was with us last night. And again, it's free, but you do need to register because we have to be able to put out as many seats as we need. We get charged $2 a seat, so we don't want to put out more chairs than we need, but we also want to make sure we have plenty of chairs and we're ready for your arrival. So you can register online for this free event at worldviewtube.com/events, worldviewtube.com/events. All right. Now, if you want to mark down your calendar for the next National the National Worldview Weekend, we're moving it from the Ozarks to the Mid-South. You can put that on your calendar right now, October 3rd and 4th. We'll be right back. We live in uncertain times. In fact, we live at a time when our own governments all over the world are warning us that there could be big problems with our power grid. World War III seems to be right on the horizon. Let me ask you this. Do you have a satellite phone? Should communications go down with cell towers? Do you have a satellite phone to get a hold of that college student or your spouse who travels, whatever it might be, to get a hold of your senior adult parents? We have satellite phones at worldviewtalk.com, and you get the satellite phone for free when you sign up for their very reasonable payment programs for the service. Sign up for the service with a reasonable contract, get the satellite phone for free. Worldviewtalk.com. You'll also find they have, well, what I now have, which is a solar generator. Yeah, I have a gas generator, an LP propane generator, but what if that goes down? I want to back up to my backup. So I now have a solar generator as well. You'll find them at worldviewtalk.com. Check it out today, worldviewtalk.com. All right, welcome back. 1-800-347-9829. Your thoughts, your comments, your questions. 1-800-347-9829. As I was saying before the break, be sure to mark down October 3rd. That's a Friday night. And Saturday the 4th, we're moving our national conference to outside of Memphis in the Mid-South. We'll be putting up the information for you to register real soon. Friday night, October 3rd. Saturday, October 4th. Our keynote speakers already confirmed include Gordon Chang in person. Gordon Chang. And we'll also have with us Alex Newman. And we'll also have with us Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen Reports. Mark Mitchell, the lead pollster of Rasmussen Reports. I was talking to him the other day, and I was saying, it'd be great to see you do a presentation on the worldview of Americans. And so he's going to be polling Americans between now and October on the worldview of Americans on a whole lot of issues, so we can get an understanding of what it is the average American believes today, where their worldview is at. And so it's going to be very informative. Gordon Chang, Alex Newman, Mark Mitchell, lead pollster of Rasmussen, and more to be announced very soon. But I hope you'll go ahead and put it on your calendar. Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, the 4th of October. This will be our 22nd annual National Worldview Weekend Conference this year, just outside of Memphis. Easy to get in and out of the airport. Very, very easy to get in and out of the Memphis airport. And we'll be putting up the hotels soon. Let's run to the calls. Let's go to David, line 2. David in South Florida. Hi, David.
Hey, Brandon, how are you today? Good to talk to you.
You too.
Hey, just a comment on what you guys are talking about. Given what we know from Revelation, even though what Donald Trump is doing right now is seemingly good, he's only going to be in it for 4 years. And I think what we're seeing right now with artificial intelligence, I think we're seeing the groundwork, the infrastructure is put in place for the beast system that's talked about in Daniel as far as the fourth kingdom that will subdue and crush the entire earth, the United States included. So even though we're seeing some good things going on right now, just think, after Donald Trump's term is done and who knows who gets in there, this technology could be turned around and right against us. And so I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. But I think that's what we're seeing, the infrastructure being built is the beast system.
I think you're absolutely right. I think Leo and I both agree on that with you. And thank you for your call. Really appreciate it. Micah has written in, and he wants to know if we would be willing to interview some of the candidates that are running for the Supreme Court there in Wisconsin. And the answer is yes. Let me work on that, see if I can interview some of them for Brandon House Live. But that's a very important Supreme Court races are coming up in the Wisconsin area. Let's run back to the phones. Let's go to Christine, line 4. Christine, thank you for calling in, Christine.
Hi, Brandon. I know you already know this, but Leo is amazing. What an amazing addition he is to your team. I know he has
I do know that. You're 100% right.
Yeah. But this is my concern right here. I take umbrage with one thing that was said. You already know that the AI is sentient, it's self-aware, and that in itself would speak to the demonic nature. That just piggybacking off what the last gentleman just said, when the beginnings of NASA, the demonic nature of where our technological advances have really spun off of is, Werner von Braun and the NASA program, and I mean all of that. It's just astoundingly creepy.
It is. And let me have you speak to that real quick, Leo. The demonic side of it. You and I, months and months ago, did a show on AI and people wanting to talk to their dead relatives through artificial intelligence. And I said, how is that any different than trying to talk to your so-called dead relatives through a Ouija board? And how concerned do we have to be that demons will just now use this technology in order to talk to people? And you're not talking to your dead relative. You're talking to a demon using AI. And I think that's kind of what Christine's warning about, the demonic hijacking of AI. Your thoughts?
Yeah, she couldn't be more spot on. I personally think AI is tailor-made for just such a concept to take place at some point. In Revelation, it talks about how, this image is going to take on lifelike forms and be talking and whatnot. And we see the possibilities of that for the first time in human history through this technology of AI, where they can literally, make up, fake voices, fake images that look so real, Brandon, that you would swear it was, say, Brandon House talking, when it's really just a AI nanobot that looks exactly like Brandon House.
Yeah.
And so think of the possibilities here. Christine's exactly right, for evil spirits to influence the people who are doing the input. As I talked about before, AI output is only as good as the input. And if you have people who, and there is a very religious aspect to some of this technology. A lot of these tech people are into this type of spiritual, awakening, as they call it. They're not just New Age stuff. You even can see stories online of people claiming to have spoken with Jesus through AI. I mean, It is really creepy, Brandon.
100%. David, line 3. Hi, David. Thanks for calling in.
Hi, this is David. I don't know if you guys are aware of it. For a few years now, there's been an actual AI robot. I believe her name is Sophia. She's actually registered as a citizen of Saudi Arabia. I've seen interviews on TED Talks where they question her, and they've even asked her questions like, would you harm a human being? And she was very cryptic about her answers. It was actually scary. It looked like something out of a science fiction film, except this is AI in a human-looking robot form. If you haven't looked into it, it's incredibly interesting.
I think we've talked about this, actually, but I need to go back and refresh my memory. Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Zoe, line 1. Hi, Zoe. Thanks for calling in.
Hi, Brandon. Can you imagine if Hitler had AI, and it wouldn't have just been the Jews, that would have been, not that I mean just like that, like it sounded, but,
right.
The White Rose Society, or whatever they were called, the Christians that were putting out that journal, and they got caught and killed, executed within a few days of having gotten caught. And I just wanted to say real quick, I'm really disturbed about, I love a lot of the things Trump's doing, and right now I love the Doge at the moment, but despite everything. But I'm worried about if we take Gaza, we're going to end up in a war. I know we will, because we'll be a buffer for Israel, and I don't want us to get in a war.
Well, I agree. Closing comment, Leo?
That is a very real possibility that Christine talked about. Was that Christine? No, that was Zoe. Zoe, yes. And so let's keep our alert on red alert, high alert, and make our feelings and voices known. Speak out, speak truth to power wherever we can, and just let the chips fall where they may, Brandon, and pray, pray, pray.
Amen to that. LeoHolman.com, LeoHolman.com. Stay tuned for Crosstalk with Jim Schneider at vcy.org. Take care. And we're back with WROS out of Jacksonville, Florida, and Worldview Tube audience and Leo Holman. Leo, what other big trends are you following? What other things are of concern to you, to Mr. Holman?
I'm very concerned about the Ukraine war. President Trump said that he would end it on day one. It has proven much more tricky of a concept to end this war, Brandon. He, I believe, has spoken with Putin by phone. He's spoken with Zelensky. Elon Musk was in the room. I'm not sure why. But here we are 3 weeks in, and there's been a slight crack in the window in the last few days, like maybe something is brewing. But I thought within 3 weeks that we would be further down the path of ending this bloodbath in Ukraine. And here we are with it still going on. That's of high interest to me, because I think if it's not ended, we'll end up seeing American boots on the ground there in a much more bloody war than anything we've seen in recent history.
Let's go back to worldviewreport.com. That's your daily aggregated news site. Let's see what else we got up there, Leo. There's so much news going on. I don't know what we're going to have happen on Saturday at noon. Saturday noon is probably going to be about the middle of the night for America.
Oh, is it noon? Noon Israel time?
Well, they keep saying noon on Saturday, and I don't know if he means DC time or Israel time. But Trump has said noon Saturday. But we may find ourselves back on the air this weekend. Who knows, right? I mean, they're already moving troops to the border. I'm reading that right now. They're already moving troops to the border. What do you anticipate happening this weekend?
Is it just more of Trump bargaining, putting the most extreme position out there and hoping to get something close to it, but maybe not all of the hostages released? I guess we'll find out, Brandon. This is Trump's style. He tends to make public these no compromising type demands, and then he ends up getting, maybe half or a little more than half of what he wanted or what he called for, but it ends up being a win, but maybe not as big of a win as people had hoped for. We will see in the coming days. I don't know how it's going to play out, but I think it has wide-ranging ramifications, and if Trump gets backed into a corner and to the point where he has to bring U.S. troops into Israel, I think that's going to hurt him. I think it's going to hurt his popularity. We saw some of it from your callers a minute ago, where people do not want to get involved, Brandon, in another Middle East war.
No, they don't. Look what Bill Gates said on The View the other day. Tell me what you think of this, please.
Stuff. My foundation partners with USAID on nutrition and getting vaccines out. And, there's incredible people. They're not actually worms that work there. So, hopefully we'll get some of that work back in shape. In fact, if we don't, you could have literally millions of deaths. So, with aid.
Millions of deaths. What does he know that we don't know, Leo?
We've wondered this for a few years now, haven't we? I mean, we all heard that interview with him and his ex-wife, Melinda, in the heat of COVID. I think it was maybe late 2020 or early 2021, where he said, if you think this is bad, wait